I've always been a fan of the VLOOKUP function in Excel to marry data from two different tables together, separate sheets, separate workbooks. But one of its shortcomings was that you can only move one column of information at a time in that match process, kind of joining two data sets together and moving. You'd have to move one column at a time. Starting with versions of Excel in 2020 and newer, they've added a tool called Xlookup that allows you to move all of the columns in one swoop. That's what we're going to do today. So I've got some sample data here. It's real data, but I'll show you a real life scenario where I would use this. So I have school test score data for every school in Minnesota that tested third graders in math in the year 1819. So I can see I've got my proficiency percentage, etc. I kept this pretty simple just for example's sake. But then in a separate sheet, so I've called this sheet Xlookup 1, and in the data that goes along with this video, that's where you'll find it, so Xlookup 1. And then in Xlookup 2, I have additional pieces of information about those schools that I keep handy because there's times I want to categorize them. I want to categorize them. Are they in the 7-county metro in the Twin Cities area? What part of Minnesota are they in? Outstate, suburbs, the core cities of Minneapolis and St. Paul? What county are they in? What kind of school is it? These are all things I keep track of, but it never comes in the school test score data. But the school test score data always has this school ID number, and so I just keep this school ID number attached to all these pieces of information. So I can join the two. So I want to join this school ID number in my Xlookup 2 table with the school ID number in my Xlookup 1 table, and then have it bring back everything in these other columns: county, metro, location, and school type. So the Xlookup function, what it's going to do is going to ask us to say, well, what do you want to look up? And we're going to tell it to look up this first school ID in the data, and then it wants to know, what do you want to match it to? What's the array of the things you want to match it to? And the array we want to match to is in this A column, all these school IDs. And then it's going to ask us, what array do you want to return? And that would be all of these columns, B, C, D, and E. To simplify things, I'm going to name these areas of data so that Excel can find them more easily and we don't have to write such a complicated formula. I think in directions you might see for Xlookup elsewhere, you won't see this step done. It might tell you to hard code it with cell addresses. So this is going to make it a little easier. So what we're going to do first is highlight the school ID values. So I put my cursor on the first one and I do, I'm on a Windows machine, Control-Shift-Down arrow, but on a Mac it'll be Command-Shift-Down arrow. So I've highlighted all my school IDs in my Xlookup 2 table. I'm going to right mouse click and choose Define Name. It's down toward the bottom of the list. And on the video it might be tough to see this. I can't really make this much bigger. But what you do is you give this range of data a name. And so I'm going to call this school IDs. And you want to make sure the scope is set to workbook, which should be the default. Now at the bottom you'll see it says refers to Xlookup A5 to A5987. That's the ugly code you would have to write if we didn't do this define name process. So you can see you're going to see in a minute how much easier this is going to be. So there's my school IDs. Now we're going to do the same process for these 4 columns. So I'm going to highlight the first row and the first 4 columns and then do that same Control-Shift or Command-Shift-Down arrow. And then right mouse click, Define Name, and I'm going to call this school_details. And you can see I'm just making up a name. It's like whatever you want it to be. So now those 2 things are named. So now I'm going to go back to my Xlookup 1 table. And over here we're going to, in a blank column, we're going to we're going to do the Xlookup formula. So let me make my screen a little bigger for you. So we're going to say equals Xlookup, and it's going to say what's the lookup value you want. And so we want the value that's in A5, which is the first ID number for this school. And then what's the lookup array? So that's the school IDs. Notice I just started typing school and it gives me the names of my two IDs. So I'm going to choose school IDs and then comma, and then what's the return array? Well, that's the school details we made. And then you have some options, these ones in parentheses, if not found, match mode, search mode, those are optional. The if not found is particularly useful because we can put in here and say not found, and it's going to drop the words not found into our cell if it doesn't make a match. So, and the reason it's in quotes is so that Excel knows that's just a string value. It's not a function. It's not a name of a defined name range that you named or anything like that. So you just put quotes around it. I'm not going to cover match mode and search mode. You can look those up online for more details. This is going to get you a lot. So you close the parentheses and hit enter. And look at that. It populates all of the columns. So now I can just copy this down. I'm going to double click. It doesn't let me double click though. Maybe the one thing I don't like so far. I've got like 800 rows. Now look at there. So there just happens to be this row at the bottom that the state includes statewide, a statewide record in the data set. It's not for a particular school. And so of course it didn't find a match for that one, so it says not found. And the other fields are not filled in because it didn't find it, but there we go. So we can then also now, we can label these county, metro, location, school type. You could do a paste special values if you want to get rid of the join, but we can also, let's use our filter. Whoops, I didn't want to do that. Filter and see if there's any other ones that say not found besides that one at the bottom. Oh, there it is, not found. Just the one. So it worked great. Exactly the way we wanted. Now I have all this information about these schools attached to it. Thanks for watching.